Neville Goddard, Think from the End. How to actually use his teachings to manifest your best life. Long before manifestation became a social media trend. Long before vision boards, affirmation apps, and 5-step morning routines, there was a man delivering nightly lectures in New York and Los Angeles who had figured out something most people still haven't fully grasped. His name was Neville Goddard, and his teaching was unlike anything before or since. He wasn't selling a system. He wasn't asking you to beg the universe for what you wanted, or to repeat positive statements you didn't believe, or to wait patiently for something outside of you to change. He was telling you something far more radical, that you are the operant power, that your imagination is God, and that the world you are living in right now is nothing more than a perfect reflection of what you have already assumed to be true on the inside. Let's start with the idea at the very heart of his teaching. Neville called it thinking from the end. In his own words, from his lectures, there is no stopping the man who can think from the end. Nothing can stop him. He creates the means and grows his way out of limitation into ever greater and greater mansions. It does not matter what he has been or what he is. All that matters is what does he want. What he meant by this is a complete reversal of how most people approach their goals. Most people look at where they are, at their current bank balance, their current circumstances, their current relationships, and they try to work their way forward from there. They think, when things change, I will feel different. When the money arrives, I will feel abundant. When the opportunity appears, I will feel confident. Neville said this is the wrong direction entirely. He said, you must first occupy the end. Feel it. Live from it. Assume it as already done. And the outer world, without exception, will reorganize itself to match your inner state. Not because the universe is granting wishes, but because your assumptions, held consistently and felt deeply, are the very cause of your outer experience. And this is where his most famous principle comes in, the law of assumption. Neville stated it plainly, over and over again, across hundreds of lectures. An assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. Read that again slowly. An assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. He wasn't asking you to pretend. He wasn't asking you to lie to yourself. He was pointing to something real about how the subconscious mind works. That whatever inner state you occupy consistently and persistently, your subconscious eventually accepts as the new normal. And once it does, the outer world conforms. He wrote in The Power of Awareness, by persisting in the assumption that you already are the person you want to be, you rise above all doubt, fear, and belief in the power of outside conditions or circumstances, and your world inevitably conforms to your assumption. Your world inevitably conforms to your assumption. Not maybe, not sometimes, inevitably. So how do you actually do this? How do you move from understanding the teaching to living it? This is where Neville's practical techniques become genuinely powerful, and where most people underestimate the depth of what he was describing. The first step is to get specific about the end state. Not a vague wish. Not, I want more money, or I want to be successful. Neville was insistent on this. You must define the state you want to occupy, clearly, concretely, in full sensory detail. Ask yourself, what would it feel like if this were already true? What would I see? What would people around me be saying? What would I be saying to myself? What is the texture of this life I'm imagining? This is why future scripting is one of the most powerful tools you can pair with his teaching. Writing in the first person, present tense, as though your desired life is already your reality. Not, I will have, or I want to have, but I have. I am. This is my life. Write it in full. Write it with feeling. Write the version of you who already lives there. How they think, how they move through the world, how they relate to money, to opportunity, to themselves. Then use that script as your meditation. Read it slowly. Close your eyes. Step inside it. Feel it as real. Neville called this SATS, the state akin to sleep. The drowsy, relaxed state just before you fall asleep at night, when the conscious mind loosens its grip and the subconscious becomes most receptive to new impressions. He taught, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and go to sleep in this mood. The sensation which dominates the mind as you fall asleep, though false, will harden into fact. Your last conscious feeling before sleep is a direct instruction to your subconscious mind. Use it deliberately. Let your future script guide you into that state. Fall asleep inside the version of life you are choosing to assume is real. Now here is the part of Neville's teaching that most people miss, and it changes everything. He said the feeling is the secret, not the words, not the visualization alone. The feeling. Because the subconscious doesn't respond to images and statements. It responds to what feels real. And real, to the subconscious, means emotionally inhabited. This is why you can repeat an affirmation 1,000 times and feel nothing shift. The words are touching the surface. The feeling goes underneath. When you read your future script and you feel that quiet, settled sense of, yes, this is true, this is mine, this is who I am. That is the moment the work is happening. That is the assumption beginning to harden. Neville put it this way: live your life in a sublime spirit of confidence and determination. Disregard appearances, conditions, all evidence of your senses that deny the fulfillment of your desire. Rest in the assumption that you are already what you want to be. For in that determined assumption, you and your infinite being are merged in creative unity. Disregard the current evidence, not in denial, but in the understanding that the current outer world is simply a lagging reflection of a previous inner state, and you are now choosing a new one. The last piece of Neville's teaching worth sitting with today is perhaps the most freeing of all. He said persistence is everything, not intensity, not perfection of technique, not getting it right every single time. Persistence, the loyal, consistent return to the assumed state, day after day, night after night, in meditation, in the quiet before sleep, in the way you hold yourself as you move through your day. And he was clear: the outer world will often seem to contradict your assumption. Circumstances may appear to argue against it. Old patterns will surface. The gap between where you are and where you're going will sometimes feel vast. Remain faithful to the assumption, he said, and the assumption will harden into fact. Not because you forced it, not because you tracked every sign or analyzed every coincidence, but because you held the inner state steady long enough for the subconscious to accept it as the new truth. And once it does, the outer world has no choice but to follow. Neville Goddard spent decades teaching one thing in 100 different ways. You are not a person waiting for the world to give you a better life. You are the imagination wearing a body. And whatever you dare to assume, clearly, feelingly, persistently, is already on its way to you. The only question is, what are you willing to assume is true? Start there. Like, share, and subscribe for more. Comment below if you have used future scripting and did it work for you. For a free future reality script generator, head to abundancehq.net. Link in the description.